When you're stuck with OCD, you're really, really glued to your feared scenario. You can hear it in people's voices when they come in for calls. You can see it in their eyes and their facial expressions. They are completely fixated on the feared scenario, glued to it, and all their questions are fixated on releasing it by trying to get to it in the way that they think is going to do that. Problem is, the way they think is going to do that is this one. So Rob, how long have you been recovered? Not a reassurance question. I'm just very intrigued. Okay. So I can see straight away the compulsive brain scared of staying stuck, right? Now, sometimes I answer that question straight away. But then sometimes I think, no, just leave that. Don't go into that one for now. But no, I need to know. It's not reassurance. You can tell just straight away by the change in tone as it goes up that they believe that is going to get them the answer. Now, the best thing to do in those situations is to ask yourself, what if I heard the thing I didn't want to hear right now? What would be my next move, like in chess? Say I heard, oh no, nobody ever recovers. You always feel chronic guilt and anxiety to some level. Then suddenly it'd be, oh, right? But that wouldn't be very hopeful. So that wouldn't be productive for hopeful. But then suddenly they'd go, oh, they've turned down the inner work rate. Oh, well, okay, there's nothing I can do there, right? You can hear the clutching at straws, right? That I need the answer, I need the answer, I need the answer. The next reassurance question that comes in is, how long did it take you? Exactly. How did you feel exactly? What went through your head when you started recovering? What was the exact point that the light bulb moment that got there for you? Again, the comparison compulsion, wanting to know exactly. And I can see it all the time. If, say, Sam's telling a story, people are, POCD, right, exactly, I need to do exactly what he did. Now, again, the comparison compulsion, I need to see what he did because then I can do it exactly, right? Let's think of the recovery journey in layers. When I recovered from harm, false memory OCD, where that really went, I went into sensory motor. That's not going to be necessarily the case for you at all. You might recover from harm, spend 4 years feeling fine, then it goes to something else. I had lots of control and work-related compulsions. That's not in everybody, right? Exactly breaking down the fears is the same. Changing our perspectives, working towards unconditional self-acceptance. But the compulsive I is glued to, I need to hear a word that's going to create a release now. Why? Because they've experienced that at different levels of the journey. But to get to robust recovery, it's not just those one-off things like, oh, you hear this thing, bye. I've never met anyone recovered in my life who came in and was like, okay, I'll just say this one thing to them. Boom, okay, 20 years fine. No. Look at the robust stories. Who's robust? Me? Nick's robust? Sam's robust? I'm talking about ones in the near vicinity that we're talking about here that you know in the groups. Momin's robust. Why? Just look at how they process fears. Look at their thinking. Look at how they're breaking things down. You can see it's hard to trigger Sam. I could say watch anything, read anything. You see his thinking sounds like this. Well, that wouldn't be awful. It wouldn't be ideal because of ... You can hear it's calmed down. You can hear that in Nick. You can hear that in me. You can hear that in Momin, right? You can hear that. It goes down. Then you listen to a first call of someone. So, tell me what's going on. Oh, if I don't love my girlfriend, it's awful, terrible, unbearable, I can't stand it. Okay, irrational stuff. Oh, if my girlfriend's ears are too big, I'm just turned off by her, I need to get rid of her today. Okay, irrational and a compulsive urge rid today, right? Oh my God, if I've done something in the past, I can never be happy ever again. Not even 1 second, my whole life's ruined. Compulsive, guilt, self-downing, black and white thinking. So you can see all this thinking where it's getting sort of jammed up and where it's become compulsive and getting people stuck. That glued sensation. You can see it in their questions. You can see it in their answers. You can see it in their tone. So it's learning to think of the journey as a marathon, not a sprint, learning to stop that glue. And you also hear that compulsive chop and change. Compulsive chop and change. What's that? That's when, these terms that I'm coining, that when someone's like, Hey Rob, what do you think of ERP? Hey Rob, what do you think of mindfulness? Hey Rob, what do you think of yoga? Hey Rob, what do you think of this? And it's like they're darting, clutching at straws, left, right and centre, It's like you need to think you're not going to get instant. You've got to change your perceptions gradually. The work that we do is super focused on that in every way possible. If there's anything that we think improves OCD, we introduce it. If there's any kind of thinking that we want to add, change, whatever, we're adding it, right? But the chop and change is where it's like, I'm going to go to CBT on Monday. I'm doing ERP on Friday. I'm doing mindfulness on Tuesday. Robert, what do you think of this? Oh, my CBT therapists don't really like them. Move to this one. Oh, have you heard of them? Have you heard of them? Like all the time, right? And I get it all day, every day in sessions, particularly first sessions. CBT is changing your beliefs gradually, right? With some shifts on paper and doing some behavioural exercises, which is usually accompanied with exposures, right? The level they get into OCD is so little, right? Yes, the theory, of course, makes sense. Look at what Albert Ellis formed, rational motive behaviour therapy. Then that went on to form into CBT. But all the depth was lost along the ways as they tried to quickly package something, right? If I go to a CBT therapist now on OCD, just as a pure theoretical question-like basis, and I said, okay, she just said to me, right, you're going to find a CBT therapist, right, for OCD, right? And I asked them these questions. Okay, I'm really catastrophizing, fear of going to prison forever. I think I've committed a terrible crime and I'm a bad person, and I've got sensory motor OCD. 1 and 2, they would find impossible to change the perspectives on. They would primarily come from the angle of getting you to accept a bit prison. That's not bad, but mainly, hey, you're having a thought about prison. That's not actually real. You need to bring that thought along for the ride. A key part of the journey, absolutely. And then what they would also be doing is they would be getting you to try and change your relationship with OCD thoughts, which obviously gets you only so far, because once you really utterly convinced the thing is real, it doesn't do that, because it just chops through everything, just completely, right? And that's what most people do not realise. It absolutely cuts through everything. It's like people who say to me like, hi Rob, yeah, really enjoyed our session. I think I'm going to go and do like my 6 free NHS sessions. Nothing wrong with doing 6 free NHS sessions, nothing wrong. But there's also not too much right there, because if you think of it like this, just plain and simply, if you want to do well in anything, you are going to a source of knowledge, right? If I ask the average NHS therapist, hey, tell me what sensory motor OCD is, and those questions I just asked, they won't be able to answer those. They won't be able to answer those usually, right? So the source of knowledge is very low. Your knowledge over an NHS therapist on OCD is probably right now miles ahead, because they have not had that experience. They have not, they are going on basic stuff. So if you just typed in OCD in Google, what it brings up on the first 2 or 3 listings of very basic OCD stuff is what you are getting, right? So then when people say to me, oh, I'm going to ERP therapist for OCD, and they're very experienced. That's good, okay? That's got a lot of good benefits, of course. Everything of which we cover in depth here, exposures, all of that in depth. But they are, yes, doing exposures, good. But the problem is, exposure is such a small part of the recovery journey. Even saying that, the people who are doing the exposures suddenly start to ears prick up and they go, that's interesting. Wait, and now I understand why that guy had done so many exposures and has been stuck. But they don't understand the next parts, right? If I am scared of going to prison, I watch loads of videos on it, great. I get used to prison, great. It turns down the anxious response, great. I stop the compulsions, great, okay? If I'm convinced I'm a bad, rotten individual who's going to go to hell forever and I deserve to be punished mentally in my mind 24/7, that does nothing for that. And so you got rid of all the first part, the fears come down on lots, and now it's just mental rumination, I'm bad, I'm terrible, mental rumination, right? So you have got to think about what's happening as the process in your head going through those steps. So exposure gets you so far. Exposure got me so far, right? Did loads of exposures, all compulsively as well, because that's usually misunderstood about compulsive exposures. And that's always encouraged, the compulsive exposures, because they don't understand it. How? Let me demonstrate. Hi, I want to get recovered from OCD. I want to do 10 exposures a day. Well done. That's just the attitude we need. Here's the 10, do them. Right, and tomorrow. Okay, and then they get to the point. Okay, you've done enough exposures now, but I still feel bad. Now you need to wait for it to set in. That waiting goes on forever, because there is, after you've done them, the brain keeps morphing. OCD is so sneaky. What it does is it waits for you to find the thing that you think you need to expose to. You expose, you get relief sometimes, complete relief in that moment, feel completely free, and then it chases, and it looks for that gap to snuggle itself into, like in existential, and then you're like, but I can't expose anymore to my existential fears. I've watched a documentary, but that could be real and I'm still scared. Because then they don't understand the uncertainty components. They don't understand the fighting to change your environment, all the subtle parts of the recovery journey. Is there internal control? Is there unwilling to feel uncertainty? Is there lots of fears relating to life and other things that they've been through, and they're like, there's a million different factors. Not a million, but there's quite a few different factors that are usually at play. So you go through it in a really, and then also people get these like false senses of like recovery, where they go in, they do a bit of ERP, they get some response, and they're like, wow, that's so worked, that's so great. And it's just like, I always know, it's just like, all right, wait 6 months and see what happens, right? I know that once those are over, then they're going to still be locked. And if you ask them, they'll be like, yeah, I'm still locked up in my head, but I feel better than I did because of ... And it's like, you can just see clearly why someone's stuck. Beliefs, they haven't changed them. There. Behavioural exposures, but they haven't done them. Right, there. Combo of both, done in the right way, looking at the right things, they get better, always. But getting to that point requires insight and practice, which most don't do. So when you look at all these things, the only reason people are stuck is because of obvious reasons, but it takes a little while for that to change. That's it. It's the science of it. But if you chop and change, where you're like, I'm going to do a bit of mindfulness, do this, you're chasing, thinking, I'm just going to get my answer. How many times from mindfulness did I think that? I'll do some mindfulness. Oh, I'm feeling so much more relaxed right now. God, that feels so much better. Oh my God, that is the all cure. No, mindfulness is a part of relaxing. It's a part of helping the body to calm. But if you're convinced that you committed some murder and you're the worst person on earth, that's just going to cut through like a hot knife through butter. So it's really, really, really vital that in anything you do in life, you seek knowledge. Because if I wanted to become an expert in collecting toy cars, I want to meet somebody who's got a big toy car collection, has been repairing toy cars, and knows all the history of toy cars. I wouldn't want to just type in Google, toy car collecting, and read a one-paragraph Wikipedia article. That's like the most generic thing ever. And what's actually happening is in a lot of OCD and NHS OCD and stuff like that, is you're literally just hearing that paragraph plus a few additional things. I mean, if I go into a GP, so give me OCD specialist, I say, right, I've got stuck on my saliva for 20 years, sensory motor OCD. They're going to be like, okay, let me just look up what sensory motor OCD is. So it's going to be like that. There's no offense to them. I think that everyone is trying to do the best job that they can. I think they're working really hard to try and get good knowledge. But it's like anything in life. That toy collector of the toy cars, maybe been collecting for 20, 30 years. There might be a guy who's 15 years old, 14 years old. He's just started collecting them. He might be really passionate. He might have spent a year doing it. It's worlds apart in knowledge. I see it in all different things that I see. Whenever I like a new hobby or something, you go to maybe, I don't know, some sport or anything, and then you meet someone who's like really high up in that or really experienced that, and you think, fuck it, that's worlds apart from the other one. And that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for that knowledge. And so how on earth, like if someone said to me now, Rob, I want to work with you for 2 weeks. I want to learn loads about OCD. It's like, I'm not trying to blow my trumpet and be like, oh wow, about knowledge. I'm trying to point a principle for helping people recover is this. If I had to just talk to them for 2 weeks on sensory motor OCD, I could, because there's so much to cover. But sensory motor OCD would usually get about 3 sentences in an OCD book, yeah? But you could cover so much on sensory motor OCD. I had someone come in, fear of sneezing and then causing a brain aneurysm. I saw yesterday in the paper, a guy held in a sneeze and tore his esophagus somehow, some rare freak accident, right? But then people wouldn't put the 2 links together about that fear, and then how they become compulsive about holding the sneeze, then they become compulsive about, even when they're not holding their nose, that they're blocking it subconsciously, and then they're scared of the subconscious link. Just that, sneezing, you could talk for an hour on. There's so many components to that. All the compulsions they've been doing, like trying not to sneeze, trying not to be near anything that makes them sneeze, fear of sneezing in their sleep. This, I could talk about just that for hours. 99.9% of people will have, in the OCD world, will have never, ever heard of sneezing-related OCD. Ever. I could think of maybe a couple that would have heard of it. Why? Because you don't see it that often. 2, because the complexity involved with it is quite hard to understand. And if you never see it, and it's hard to understand, the odds of those things coming together is very low, right? So when you think of these things, some people say to me, Rob, when are you writing your book? When are you writing your book? Yeah, and I like the encouragement to write my book, and I'm writing my book. And it's like, how long do you think this book is taking me, where I've got to think of all the things, all the stories, all the history, all the themes, all the experiences? I could write this book so long, so I'm trying to make it on the key facts, but also include the great stories and the horror stories, so that people can see the journeys from great stories of hope, where I remember a girl came into me, she wanted to jump from a shopping centre. She tried to jump from a shopping centre. She was about 17. The day she came in for the first session, the day before, she tried to jump from a shopping centre. The parents had stopped her, caught her, then she'd come in, and then she was like in a fantastic position in a very short time, probably in about 3-4 months. And then she went on for years in a very good way, just because of how getting into those particular things really made that significant change. She had setbacks afterwards, but she was just one of those cases, super proactive. Her own case was like that. Obviously, not all cases take that time. You know, this varies. A couple of months, a couple of years, whatever, right? It's different. And that's like a sort of positive story from how close she was to losing her life to change. And then horror stories of people like sort of bleaching their genitals to get rid of a contamination OCD and ending up with terrible burns and scars and so on. So you see horror stories of all kinds of things. So that's why it takes a while, because you're having to put things together. I could have done the books as separate themes, but then it'd be too niche to OCD, and only OCD sufferers would read the books, which is good. But then it's not. It doesn't relate to the mainstream so much. Where I think the way the whole book formation. I've written lots and lots of the book, but the formation of how it will go from the front will sort of basically be along the concept of the sort of how you actually recover, right? Which will then be broad enough for anxiety, GAD, PTSD and everything, sort of covering all those components. And I've written sort of things in segments at the moment, just all sections, brainstorming it. But I've got a lot more to do, and it all needs to be put together and stuff like that. So, it's difficult, because if you think about my day-to-day life at the moment, I have and this isn't someone just saying like, oh, I've got no time. Like time management, you can always manage time better. I get that, right? But at the point I am with where we are with things and growing things and so on, it's like we're doing huge numbers of hours of one-to-ones and so much social media and all the WhatsApp groups that have thousands and thousands of people in all the different groups. It's like, it's a lot, and we've got a team, that help with everything, and that's growing as well. And it's like, it's a lot, and we're dealing with a lot. And OCD requires thinking. Like, say for example, now I just spend like half an hour thinking of things, making videos, making posts, stuff like that. It takes a lot of time. And then when you're writing a book, you want even more time. Like most people write a book. I'm not talking about people that are pretty successful writing a book. I mean, Of course, you can have other people help write the book, but with OCD, it's such a personal journey that's specific. It's not like light-hearted. It's not like going to some ghostwriter and saying like, oh, this is my story a bit. It's got to be pretty specific. But obviously, I've got the guys around me in this team that know OCD too, so I can say lots of things to them and they can help word it and stuff like that, which is great. But I think it's really important that that book is done right and done well, not just right OCD, but it's done well, and it's done, OCD's done justice in that fashion. But yeah, with time, a lot of people who write books, they've got time. They're just sitting there doing it. They think, oh, I'm going to spend the next 6 months writing a book, right? But it's a bit difficult when like all the things that we're doing are like writing a book, because social media is like a kind of virtual book. Like if you just think like making a video, you've got to sit down, think about what you want to talk about. Like this video, not this video, this audio clip now, this hasn't been prepared. This is just straight instant, what am I going to say? But some of the things we have to really think, making TikToks, okay, how are we portraying that person's journey, right? Okay, we need pictures of them when they're really not well as well, because if we just post pictures of them doing well, everyone's going to think, oh, that person's journey wasn't so bad, but we need to show the reality, and that's difficult. Like just that alone. Like me, for example, I haven't got so many pictures of me stuck in those days. Why? Because I didn't even believe in cameras at that time. I had this fucking compulsion to do with that, where I used to not like photos. I used to avoid them because I was stuck in my head. I didn't like to keep being photographed when I was feeling shit. I also lived at the era where it was like the flip phone, before all these iPhones. What happened to flip phones? Loads of them broke, loads of them, what happened when we got rid of them? We just used to upload them with a cable to the computer, our photos, and then we'd get a new phone, right? Or we didn't upload them, we just got rid of the old phone and got the new one. So many of those photos from that period of my life all got lost. And then it got uploaded to a computer, which then went wrong or something. And so I don't have so many of those pictures at that time. You remember, like, I've got pictures of when I was much younger because we were taking it with disposable cameras and so on. And now it's easy to have photos because we've got amazing photo technology. We can all take photos all the time when we want. And the problem is, when you're putting together a journey of someone's story, you need to show the parts that are the reality that people can relate to. There's no point me just saying, oh, I've recovered from OCD, I did this roughly, and then off you go. People think, well, that's not very specific. You probably didn't have anything as bad as me. Whereas if I do a video that's like so specific, then the mainstream audience is like, what the fuck's that? It's weird. So you've got to make sure that you're focusing on the most relevant points that people are going to relate to and understand, because that's how you don't feel alone. I spent years in forums, terribly in forums, lost. And all I was doing was looking for things, right? And most of the stuff was just this kind of like repeated stuff that wasn't helpful. Whereas what I needed to hear was POCD, harm OCD. This is exactly what I had. This is exactly how I got better. That's what I want to know. I want to know, you had a harm OCD, locked to the past, you thought you'd killed someone, you thought you were a bad person. Key points. That relates to me, and I can see that there, in those points, that is what I need to do, okay? Hope with OCD recovery is the first point. If we don't have hope, nobody does anything. When I was in forums, I used to just think for years, never going to recover, always going to be shit, life's always going to be terrible. You just have to sort of grin and bear it. I was convinced of that, right? What happens when someone recovers with OCD? They don't want anything to do with OCD, bye, out of the forum, gone, never see them again. Right? So you're left with only the people who are stuck. So that's why we had to encourage people and say, look, when you start improving, getting better, could you please talk a bit about it? Because then it gives hopes to the next one coming through, not just leave and gone and buy, right? And that was difficult because as soon as people start improving, what do they want? What do they realize? I've spent so long on OCD, I don't want that shit in my life anymore. I feel better now, get rid of that, right? No, and they won't get back into normal life. I know that's how I felt. You think when I recovered, I thought, I want to spend the rest of my life 24/7 working with the thing that was the worst part of my life. When you're on the other side, you don't care about that. But when you're in it, you think, no, I definitely don't want that. So when people sort of subtly recover, but not fully, then they try and dart away because they don't want to be around it anymore because they think they might get triggered, which is actually the last part of the process, which isn't healthy. People need to be used to not trying to run from the symptom, from the OCD. So that's just a small part of some of the things along the journey that you're having to work through. And how you get there and how you achieve those results and goals and so on. So that you can see that how much comes into the recovery process, how much has to be thought about, how much has to be worked through. We're constantly trying to speed up and improve how we work with recovery. We're constantly trying to get out as much knowledge as possible. We're constantly trying to do books, videos, all these things, like even this audio clip. Look at how long this audio clip is, for example. It's going to be half an hour audio clip. So doing those, you have to think through all those intricacies. You're having to make it relatable. It's like if you read a science book. I remember I was reading A Brief History of Time, Stephen Hawking. I was reading it, I was thinking, this fucking ain't brief, this is hard. Like, it's very hard, this book. Like, I remember when I picked it up and I thought, oh, Brief History of Time is just easy for the average reader. It's not easy, yeah? And it's like, you've got to make things so that people understand them. And you've got to factor in that people are beginners and don't understand things at a certain level, and then you've got to go through the different levels. And then when people are more advanced, then they're scared of those last bits, the fear of fear, those sort of intricacies that they don't think they understand and not going to go through, and then often parts they don't understand. So you've got to go through all those different layers. You've got to make that relatable. You've got to help people see that from different backgrounds, understandings, often different languages. We have lots of translators for all different countries. It's difficult. We're trying to translate technical OCD terms, which are kind of words that have just been invented in English and haven't got a great counterpart translation. So you work through all those different things and you get there and you recover, and you get there and you recover. But it takes practice and it takes time, and it takes looking at these things from various angles to pick away at them. That's why when people say to me like, oh, Rob, I watched the YouTube channel and stuff, why have I not recovered? It's like, yeah, the YouTube's for a broad audience. It's not like focused, not customized like the one-to-one specific for the person. I'm having to like make it very broad on the topic, even when it sounds focused. It's not, because I need to see exactly what's going on with that person at that point in time to see exactly where they're stuck. So I hope that covers a few points today to help you get started this Saturday with wherever you are on your OCD recovery journey.